And I would like to welcome onto the stage Julia Hoggett, the Chief Executive of the London Stock Exchange.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm wearing purple and white, but I haven't got the green, so I haven't quite got the suffragist lineup. I also need to say thank you to David, in part because he promoted me in that last introduction. I am the CEO of the London Stock Exchange PLC, so the actual stock exchange. I'm not the CEO of the London Stock Exchange Group. That title sits with David Schwimmer. It is a delight to be here, and it's, as David says, well, it's a delight to be able to welcome you all physically in person and online, because for so long of my being in this role, I haven't actually been able to physically welcome people into the building. So it's a delight to feel the energy that we can get from these things. And it's also, as the Slido proves, a delight to welcome so many entrepreneurs in the room. I have a very simple adage for what stock exchanges are about. Our job is to bring together those who have capital with those who need capital in service of an objective. And it is to be a place where entrepreneurship can thrive. We need to make sure that thriving is happening not just in the public markets, but in the private markets as well, and in all structures of financing. But ultimately, we have exactly the same objective. So it's a delight to have you all here today. I want to thank David. His energy, as was just evidenced, and I'm sure is going to be evidenced throughout the day, is part of the passion that's making these things work and making this change happen. And if it got you as angry as it got me, then maybe that anger is useful in being harnessed in service of the objectives that we need. And making sure that we do have a conference that's a champion of better access to funding is not just important for this organisation, but it's critical for London Stock Exchange as well. And in fact, we've created International Women's Week rather than International Women's Day this week. And entrepreneurship and female empowerment have been at the very heart of everything that we've been seeking to do. And as one of the leading stock exchanges globally, we're very much aware of the critical role that we play in enabling access to capital raising opportunities for companies and for people all over the world. And in service of that, I want to steal a quote from the CEO, as it were, the director of the other LSE, Dame Manoush Shafiq, who on a desert island disc many years ago made the point that talent is equally distributed across the world, but opportunity is not. Now, I have remembered that. I remembered it at the sort of 11:15 on a Sunday morning when I first heard it, but I've remembered it ever since, and it's been a bit of a touchstone for me for the duties I have as a CEO in enabling opportunities for others. And I think about that very much in the context of my role here. But one of the ways in which that manifests is the disparity of availability of capital. And it exists in the private space, it exists in the public space. Only 11% of high-growth companies that have gone public around the globe in the past decade have been female-founded. More recently in London, only 8 companies that listed here last year were led by female CEOs. We were absolutely delighted about every single one of them, but there were only 8, and we did 126 last year. So that tells you just on pure hard numbers the difference. And that's why it's so important to me that we stimulate initiatives like this and the things that we're doing at the London Stock Exchange to try and change that dial. And to be blunt, I have a very simple context, which is have soapbox, we'll use it. And I think it is a duty of mine to speak out about these issues and other issues about what affects capital markets in the UK and around the world. And we want to make sure that we're doing that. And I'm delighted to have had this forum to do that today. So we've done our own tech sprints this week, partnering with Springboard. And we did it both in Asia, Europe, and the US. And it was something that not only we found incredibly valuable for the companies that were going through it, it was so empowering for the people that we had engaged in it and our own staff. I think it's something we're going to be trying to do on a regular basis. The more we can use our platform to showcase new businesses coming through, the more we want to do that. We partnered with the World Federation of Exchanges and the UN Global Compact to ring the bell for gender equality, to raise awareness about the biases that can have a negative impact on women's ability to progress to senior roles and to access funding. The interesting thing about that is I clearly didn't get the memo, but almost half the balcony on that morning on International Women's Day turned up in red and the other half turned up in green. Don't know how anybody thought about that one, but that was pretty much what happened. And we're really, really proud to be hosting this event today. And it is a superb lineup of businesswomen that you're going to be hearing from. And I hope you'll gain a great deal from the insights that they'll give you. Now, it's important to stress, as I say, that whilst we have been making this week International Women's Week, I would like every day to be International Women's Day at the London Stock Exchange. And I think we are allowed to be frustrated and to evidence our frustration about the pace of change. There has been some progress. The recent FTSE Women Leaders Review has actually illustrated how much progress has been made in representation on boards. And actually women now represent 39% of FTSE 100 board members, which is up 3% from last year. So actually the public companies have been moving step by step in a positive direction. We need to drag our private brethren up behind us, and I think we have a duty to make sure that we do. 85 of the FTSE 100 boards have met or exceeded their prior 33% target, and half now have 40% plus women on their board. And women now represent 32.5% of combined executive committee and direct report posts in the FTSE 100, which again is up 2% from last year. There is nothing like a public commitment and being held to it to make sure that people do it. And the more that we can create that transformation in the private space as well, I think that really will matter. But also we're very proud that the FTSE Women Leaders Review found us to be in the top 10 best performers in the FTSE 100, with 46% of women on boards and 39.1% of women in overall leadership positions. But we're not stopping there. And my aspiration certainly for LSE PLC is that we get to over 50%, over 50-50 women on our board in the near future. Now, there is still a long way to go. And I think breaking the bias is a critical piece that we need to do. But one of the pieces of hard work actually is in calling out that bias at every opportunity. And I'm going to say something seemingly provocative, and it's something I usually say when I'm giving diversity and inclusion speeches rather than when I'm talking about access to venture capital. But there is no empirical evidence that men dominating the upper echelons of the corporate world in this country produces the best outcomes. Now, that isn't a feminist comment. It's not even a diversity and inclusion comment. It's a research methods comment. By definition, we've never had a control group to prove that it's producing the best outcomes. And yet we require so much empirical evidence to change the status quo that we don't require for maintaining it. Now, that is actually intellectually ludicrous. And the more we can actually call that out and call out those biases, point them out, put the cold hard data that David put on the screen in front of everybody and under everybody's noses and say, I'm going to call you on that because actually that's not the evidence behind the data. We are an industry that lives on data. We're an organisation that lives on data. And yet very little of it do we hold ourselves accountable to when we're talking about this sort of debate. And therefore, I would urge every single one of you in those fora, when you see that data, use it, repeat it, talk about it, and hold people accountable for it, because I think it really, really matters. That's my way of channeling my fury into positive, proactive action. I think is probably the best way. Thank you. So if you will forgive me, unfortunately, as was alluded to, there is rather a lot going on in the world at the moment, and I'm unfortunately not going to be able to join you for everything that you're doing today. I will try and log in online and watch some of the live stream between various events. But I do wish you every success. More power to your elbow, as my mother would say and my grandmother would certainly say. And really please do enjoy, but take the most you can out of this event. One of the things I've observed this week is we've been able to bring people back together in rooms to create the foundations of networks that for the last 2 years, virtually we have done some pieces of that, but we haven't been able to do completely. And so please take every opportunity out of today's event to get the most from it. I know it's being structured superbly in service of that. So thank you very much. Good luck. Enjoy today. And it's utter pleasure to host you at the Stock Exchange. So thank
you. Before you go, there's a copy of my book.
Thank you.
Enjoy, and thank you so much for everything you've done. Wonderful.